Okay, so let me see. So Lupita, did you want to share more about this video?
Yeah. So before we got into the text heavy piece, kind of explaining the lay of the land and what the after school field really looks like, we wanted to share this new resource that just came out from the National After School Association. It's a quick 2-minute clip, but it really captures kind of the value of out of school time programs and their place in, making a difference in students' lives outside of the school day. And you can hear that my puppy's excited as well. So we're going to go ahead and share that video.
Learning Heroes, with the support from the Wallace Foundation, conducted a national survey of more than 2,000 K-8 parents and guardians, more than 600 K-8 public school teachers, and nearly 400 out-of-school time extracurricular or after-school program providers. Learning Heroes wanted to understand the role these programs play and the opportunities they offer beyond the school day. The survey found that 65% of parents enroll their children in at least one out-of-school time program. Parents say they enroll their children to expose them to new experiences, ideas, and perspectives, and to help them find their passion, purpose, and voice. Parents also prioritize programs where their children are safe, feel nurtured and welcomed, and most of all, come home happy. Across race, ethnicity, and income levels, parents with children in these programs say their kids do better academically and are more prepared for the next school year and for college. Many teachers also see significant value in extracurricular programs. They agree these programs expose students to new experiences and say programs motivate students to get excited about learning and to grow in ways beyond core academics. But despite many benefits, programs remain out of reach for some families, often due to cost, time, and transportation issues. Demand for out-of-school time activities is high among all families. Let's expand partnerships between districts and program providers to ensure equitable access to quality programs for all children.
All right, so let's get into it. So what is after school? So you've heard us say expanded learning. And so in California, as a state, right, we refer to the after school field as the expanded learning field, EXL for short. There's some folks that refer to this field as the out of school time field, or OST also. Nationally, as a whole country, it's usually referred to as the out of school time field. Because when we say after school or expanded learning, we don't just mean after school programs. So we mean programs that happen before school starts. After school, we also mean summer programs. So like summer camps and intersession learning programs. So programs that happen during winter break, programs that happen during spring break. So that is what we mean by the expanded learning field. So when you'll hear us refer to this field as the expanded learning field, mostly because we are a statewide organization, this is how we refer to the field. But just so you know, it is when we say expanded learning, we mean after school, summer, intersession. Great. And before school too. This field, it is estimated that there's about 4,500 expanded learning program sites throughout the state. And that has actually increased because we've had a recent investment by the governor of California into this field. So we expect that this number is going to grow exponentially. So it's, like I said, it's estimated that there's 4,500 sites serving 900,000 children and youth annually. So you can see that this is a very large field. And so being part of this workforce, we believe, is really an excellent introduction to working with youth and really allows for career exploration. Most of us, we've realized as time has gone by, have been impacted by after-school programs or summer programs. We know someone that has been part of these programs, and so there's always some kind of connection. So we really do believe that it is a great first job for most people. You can see here as well that the majority of this workforce, folks that work in after-school programs, they tend to come from the communities that they serve. So most people who maybe attended an after-school program when they were growing up, feel compelled to go back and potentially start their careers there. And so this is something key to keep in mind. And it's a great, like I said, it's a great first job, especially because you're familiar with this program. So hopefully you can see this graphic is a little small, so it might be hard to see. So when you get the slides, I encourage you all to go ahead and take a look. But essentially what we have here is a graphic of a tree. And you can see that the majority of folks that end up entering the workforce in expanded learning tend to be parents. They tend to be high school students, recently graduated high school students. They tend to be college students like yourselves, artists, musicians, creative people, other community members, paraprofessionals, those of you that may be working as paraprofessionals, or after school alumni, so kind of the population that I was referring to earlier. So these are the folks that tend to go into this expanded learning workforce. And they end up becoming group leaders, activity specialists, and site coordinators. So site coordinators manage all of the program leaders in program. And eventually folks end up getting a career in some of these other fields. So some people go into teaching and counseling, which we'll be focusing on today. Some people end up going into social work. They go into health careers. They become psychologists or therapists. Other STEAM careers, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math careers. And then some people like Lupita and myself stay in the expanded learning fields, and we find other ways to be supportive of this field because we love it so much. So I wanna, Lupita, am I forgetting anything before I jump into this?
No, I definitely think you covered it. Just basically saying it's a really good place to get your feet wet, right? And really explore some options, because you don't want to end up running the risk, right, of going through a teaching credentialing program or some other extensive program without knowing if that's actually what you want to do. So we find that folks that come into the workforce feel that they have a good entryway, but then a place to build their confidence and skills. So this kind of leads us to our next section, where we wanted to show you all kind of staff positions and action. So after school leaders and how they really own that space and play a big role in the lives of students in a different way that maybe teachers in the school day are able to. So as you all are watching this, I encourage you all to listen and look for what kind of staff positions are represented, how staff engage participants in those spaces, because it might look different than just in the classroom school day, right, with math, ELA. It's a different way of engaging. And then also listen and look for what kind of impact staff have on young people, because you'll hear the voices of actual youth that find their passion and find a really safe and comfortable space in after school programs. And just to highlight, we didn't want to be corny, right, and put a whole bunch of people, but sharing what Leslie kind of highlighted, a lot of our workforce come from the communities they serve. So it means our staff and after school end up reflecting the diversity of, students across California, and they can really see themselves in these leaders. So it's a really powerful position to be. So again, look out for those things, and we're going to watch another short clip before we go into our first breakout room for this session.
Active and engaged learning.
So a lot of the activities that I do, especially in art, promote collaboration, because the youth have to kind of give each other their roles and participate and help one another. But in general, they have to work together so that everything is cohesive and then it makes sense towards the end. Like three-dimensional art, the youth participate together in like the designing process. They kind of give each other like the roles where like someone needs to cut, someone needs to paint, or someone gets the like whatever it is that they're doing. And again, they have to talk to one another to make sure that they're able to succeed as a group and not just as individuals, because in the end, if they try and do everything individually, the project in itself would have failed.
We're not always busy doing one thing each day. We could spend like 2 or 3 days just on one project and make sure dedicated just to finish it and complete it and send it in.
So the best way to keep them engaged is to give them projects that they're interested in. That way they don't feel like they're doing busy work, but they feel like they're actually doing something they enjoy.
I would describe the activities as something that our students are interested in and also able to express themselves in. We had one club where we saw students making a lot of paper planes, and my program leader took that and kind of ran with it, where she can incorporate math and science and engineering and also keep their interest as well.
And this club is really fun because I get to hang out with my friends and learn new things. And I like being here because the program leaders are nice and it's really fun and it's like a creative place to be in.
One of the activities that we have an art program, we call it Art Studio, and the kids can come in after school. They work on different art projects, or they can even learn art with the art teacher. That's twice a week. We also have a ceramics program where the students can come in and build ceramics, so that's completely hands-on. One of our biggest programs right now is we have a CrossFit gym, and in there, because it's CrossFit, those kids are active, they are engaged, they are running around, they are getting their exercise every day, probably way more exercise than they get in PE.
Our dance class in particular allows the students to be creative because they have this professional dancer in front of them who's teaching them the essentials of choreography.
I was a beginner, but as a beginner, you learn and work your way up.
And so it culminates at the end of the semester where they are able to put together a piece themselves and completely choreograph it with minimal adult supervision or adult assistance and showcase their skills and their talents.
I've progressed a lot since first grade, but I hope I could do more activities with him because he helps me be free with the main thing I love. Teaches me rhythm, he teaches me how to give music the type of flair that it needs. He just helps me be who I am.
Through the implementation of the Active and Engaged Learning Standard, students are given experiences that
I was going to say, it's going to cut off in a really abrupt way. And there you go.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Yes, can I ask a question?
Yeah, really quick.
So far, I have 2 questions. My daughter is just 10 years old. That before the pandemic, she was in after school for math and science for like just improvement. And then she told me, I'm going to after school class just because my teacher told me it's good for you. So after school program for her, it means just for study. She said it's not funny. So for my mind, I'm thinking about the after school program, especially for not middle school, like the elementary school, mostly in I don't know, in my city or in the school district, mostly in focus on the like subjects, the like math, science, or whatever. But they have a lot of programs that you said is like maybe art at the video taught, like shows, and just, I don't know, I have no idea about that.
Yeah.
After school class, is it, and especially after school class, you have to pay a lot. It's not free. That's the part. And then for me, and then, and she's right now in 5th grade. And I told her, go to after school class. It's so funny because the school is started just like 10 days before the after school programs. She said, no. I said to her to go to the music or go to the art, whatever you want, or go to the yoga. She said, no, after school program for me is just like, is for some of the people that their parents are working and they have to go. And I see in most of the children in this school district in Beverly Hills, they go to the after school because their parents are working. There's, you know what? Because my English is not perfect. I'm so sorry.
No,
I don't know. Did you
but
get it? What I'm
I can jump in because I honestly want to say that you're bringing up 100% valid points. And
Yeah.
Leslie and I, we work for an agency that is doing just that, right? So since we don't staff specific programs, we end up supporting the state and trying to get to what you said, right? Being able to create these spaces as engaging spaces. You heard in the video, it was talking about standards. So that's what we kind of implemented in California to basically support people that usually have very little resources, who are not credentialed teachers, but that have all of these, you know, goals and aspirations on how to help families, especially working families that need these programs, but also to put students first and what they want to be able to do, explore, while also supporting them academically. Because a lot of times our populations in the programs are students that need that extra help. And it really does benefit being a place with folks that might be a little bit more comfortable. But it's not to say that, again, you're going to get A1. And throughout the presentation, we'll highlight kind of different ways that we still want to empower the field as a whole, but to also, you know, drive home this point that it's a field to invest in and really support so that we can have more often than not quality programs across the state, and not just these, you know, highlighted few that end up usually having a cost attached, right? So how do we keep this investment so we have good spaces? For the sake of time, honestly, I do love these conversations, but we'll have time to unpack this. Ignore the slide. We're going to shift the conversation to just respond what's important to you all, right? Being able to think of your frame of reference. Maybe you're a student that has a sibling in a program. Maybe you're a parent that really did need to utilize this service because you're working, and just when school ends is not enough time to keep your students in a safe place. So in your breakout rooms, it's going to be really quick, rapid fire. So share space if you can to hear what some folks have to say about what stood out to you from the video, but also kind of what's hitting home, kind of like Negin shared. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but what really comes to mind when you think about the profession and how it can be an option and what kind of comes from it. So we'll open up breakout rooms. We'll probably be in there for just about 5 minutes, and then we'll rapidly pull you. But still feel free to share in the chat reflections and write down those questions. We definitely want to be able to respond to what's relevant and what makes sense right now in the current times.
I was born and raised. And so this is what Excelsior District used to look like. This is if you can see, I'm the little bowl cut in the middle. A pretty diverse neighborhood that I grew up in. I'm half Mexican, Irish, Ukrainian, but I started to learn the difference between Nicaraguense and Mexican, or Chinese and Filipino, just because of how diverse that neighborhood was. And San Francisco is. I was fortunate to have that experience as like a cultural upbringing. Martial arts has been the biggest part of my life. I've probably spent more time on a martial arts mat than I have in a classroom. And so I've been studying martial arts since age 5, and that was really my first introduction to teaching. At age 12, I got my junior black belt. I became an assistant instructor in my school. By age 16, I was already teaching the adult classes, and by age 18, I was doing seminars. And so I knew from a pretty young age that teaching would be in my life. However, the arts were always a part of it. And so when I was able to get into after school, it allowed me to start by teaching martial arts, but then I actually went into my own passions. I taught a lot about urban art graffiti. We called it Wild Style 101. I taught a hip hop academy where we taught DJing, breakdancing, rapping, rhyming, and poetry. And after school really gave me that space to be able to like show my other passions through teaching. I did a ton of summer camp work also with my after school program. But before we get to that, just in terms of teaching, this guy, This is my professional photo for the yearbook that they had us take. I had been working at Juvenile Hall as a detention diversion advocacy program expediter. So my job was to meet youth that were arrested overnight and help get them out of the school, get them out of jail. And that's how I first actually heard about Beacon after school programs, where these programs were being things to help kids be accountable for their time after school. I also worked in caretaking with autistic youth and youth with disabilities. And this was all intentional for the sake of being a better educator. I knew from a very young age, I wanted to be in education because I thought if these teachers are setting the bar, I could do better than this. I eventually dropped out of high school and I actually went directly into training full time. I won the junior national championships. It was a major sacrifice and it paid off. I eventually got into the Olympic Training Center as a resident athlete in Colorado Springs for the sport of Taekwondo, and that was my life. When I came back home from Colorado, that's when I started going into more intentional youth work, and I realized all I'm good for is fighting. And I would like to do more community-based things. So I explained a little bit about some of the things I taught, but also I had a passion for leadership. I was a reluctant leader. It was at a time I had been teaching and after-school programs while I was also getting my child development degree, or I was getting ready to transfer. And San Francisco City College was at threat of losing accreditation. This was a couple of years ago. And so I went into a coordinator role. It was a full-time benefited position for somebody that didn't even have a high school diploma, but had a ton of experience working with youth. So these are some of the teams I've worked with over the years as site coordinator, a program manager, and even an associate director at one point. I was overseeing programs at 4 different school sites. And then this is an image of a conference that we would do annually. So just you're getting a little bit of a sense of how much teaching we were doing for our staff as pioneers in a new way of thinking about after school care. And really seeing it as like a viable option compared to what the school day was offering. And so I'm going to share a very revealing photo of my wife, and then I'll stop share. We won a lottery to get below market rate housing in San Francisco. At that time, I was still working in after school. I'm going to stop share before she gets upset. And so that moment for us to get housing in San Francisco, we're both SF natives, that allowed a major transition for me to go back to school. So that photo on the presentation, I'm proud to say I graduated in spring of 2021 with an art education degree during the pandemic. So everyone that's in school right now and getting through this time, shout out all of you. And so now I'm in the teacher credential program at SFSU, San Francisco State University. I'll kind of leave it open for questions if there's even times, but I will say consistently, I've had to continue advocating for myself. I'm a little bit older. I'm 38, so I don't play games with institutions. I know the ins and outs. I know how to advocate for myself, create alliance, find allies, find the safe spaces. It has not been a simple journey. I would love to say it was just rainbows and I've been walking on clouds this whole time. I have consistently had to fight to get my needs met while I've been in the teaching program. But there are always helpers. And there's really amazing people like Leslie and Lupita that are doing work like this to make it more accessible for people. And I think the last thought I'll kind of say is I am so far ahead of the curve of anyone else in my credential program because of my experience with after school. We are on the cutting edge when it comes to community building. We are on the cutting edge when it comes to restorative practices, social justice, gender orientation, inclusion. We have been advocating for gender neutral bathrooms for as long as I can remember, 10 years ago. So things that are just now buzzing in education, we've been here for 10 years, 20 years, maybe longer than some of you, or as long as some of you have been alive. There's been people like Leslie and I out here. We're really out here. So I think that kind of gives you a sense of my background. And if I can say anything else, I took little notes. They're desperate for teachers. They are trying to hire, even while I'm in this program, getting my credential. Somebody literally came up and offered and said, you should email these people right now. You're basically a ready to go teacher. And I attribute most of that to martial arts because that was my after school program. And then I attribute the other half of that to my experience in after school, which helped bring a more evolved language and a lot better way of creating community. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Cody. Thank you for sharing. I encourage folks to go ahead and put in the chat, any reflections and any appreciations. Cody, there's a question around if you're willing to share your LinkedIn so people can connect. I'll leave that up to you. And then I'll pass it on over to Lupita.
I was just taking my own notes. Sometimes I nerd out. I'm like, yes, especially when you hear from folks that actually went through and can speak to their genuine experience, right? It's a skill to be that authentic, but to know and be grounded in what you hope for the world and in your place and mark. So in the chat, still encourage you all. I know an hour presentation is never enough, but what kind of stood out to you? What resonates for you after hearing Cody's story? And also kind of what reflections or thoughts came about your own journey or your own questions that you're kind of exploring and starting by being here to learn a little bit more. Yeah, with that, awesome chats. We'll keep those going. So my next part is really just speaking to what Cody already said through narrative and in kind of a dry table way, but still important, right? Because data matters. Especially when you're trying to advocate for things that we know is true and we feel in our heart are bringing value to students and families, but that need a little bit more recognition and need, some heavy investment. So what we have here is kind of what we call core competencies, but how they directly align with the teaching profession. So on the left, you'll see kind of different targets for teaching that teachers aspire to. And then on the right, again, from the National After School Association, just some knowledge and competencies that after school bring, youth development professionals in the content area and all the rest. So to start, kind of supporting all students in learning, but we can see and feel and know that a student's only going to be ready and willing to learn if they feel that they have a place where they are and that the learning actually makes sense and matters to their life. So that's something that we definitely try to bridge in the expanded learning world. So really prioritizing those relationships to know that that's our entryway to get them invested and to see what they are actually passionate about and how we can turn that into like disguised learning and support them along the way. Teaching, you definitely have to manage and establish an effective environment to learn, especially with the varying needs of students across the board. Not everyone is the same type of learner, for example. And in after school, a parallel to that is you don't know who ends up coming to the program. Sometimes you're able to be in the same grade level, but sometimes staffing is a little tricky. So there might be double grades in a group in the after school program. So being able to be flexible, but to find community outside of just your school day classroom unit that you see during the day to build and foster kind of interest-based relationships or relationships that are a bit more transformative in the after school space. And being able to lead that is no walk in the park, kind of like Cody alluded to. Sometimes our staff are coming in with little to no experience, right? They needed a flexible part-time position. They knew they cared about kids. Maybe they helped their younger brothers and sisters get through their homework from time to time. But in this space, you have the support of that level up position. Above that is your program manager or coordinator. They go by different names throughout the state. But folks that understand where you're coming from and try to connect with what you're interested in to then lean on that. And how can you transform that into a learning experience for kids while building your own confidence in the classroom, especially in the after school pace. You have to have a ton of energy for sure. So a safe place to kind of practice those muscles and flex those skills. Going a little further is planning instruction and designing learning experiences for all students. Of course, teachers have standards that they're trying to hit, but in after school, we also have some quality standards, some targets of what we think is important for the learning space for kids. Safe and supportive environment, right? Somewhere that they feel that they're respected, but that they can explore things that they've maybe never been exposed to. You all saw that there's like dance program, right? How do you get students to feel empowered to try things out? And kind of lastly, just wrapping this up, is just developing as a professional educator. And the parallel to that in after school is you're right there front and center. You're getting engagement with families because you're the main point that they see at the end of the day, since students go straight from school maybe to your programs. And then also you're collaborating, right? You're getting to see unique ways that students are learning. They end up trusting you with things that maybe they don't have the, comfort or trust yet to share with their teachers. And then you can be that bridge with the school day to be able to bring those and surface what matters, especially when someone, we all know that student that might be misunderstood in one space, but thrives in another. And usually it's that trusting relationship that makes all the difference and connecting that learning for them. With that, I think we can go to the next slide. I also wanted to bring in a voice to a leader in the space in transparency. She is my previous staff and super willing. She wasn't able to join us today because she is actually a teacher on record now. She was a previous team leader, so leading a group of students. She worked with all grade levels. And now she is a middle school teacher in the Elk Grove Unified School District out here. So kind of what she shared, that bridges, right, that alignment of how she got all these skills in after school into her teaching role today. And this is what she kind of shared. So my experience working in after school prepared me to be a teacher by teaching me that students need to know that they have someone who will not give up on them. Being a team leader helped me realize that just like adults, kids face their own life obstacles that hinder their learning experience. Now that I'm a teacher, I make sure that every one of my students know that I care and I will believe in them no matter what obstacles they come across. So definitely this experience, being able to see students in a different way and the responsibility you kind of take on in the classroom to get them to this level or connect with what matters to them most. But what it brings us to is you all, right? Coming to this workshop, investing in yourself by just getting exposed to new ideas or maybe things that you didn't consider previously because of what you know right now, especially with the points that were brought up earlier about after school. But connect with your why. Definitely we wanted to invite folks sharing their story because passion is energy, not my words, Oprah, but feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. Because I promise you, kids can see that. They pick up on that. They know if you're invested or actually care about what you're saying. And it kind of, empowers them to be able to explore what excites them and, wanting to come to a space. Another quote I definitely wanted to share is just, in a world full of algorithms, hashtags, and followers, know the importance of human connection. And even in the time of this pandemic, right, a lot of leaders, even in the after school space, rose to the occasion, calling families, doing pop-up dance classes or just talk sessions on Zoom. Just the amount of resilience and commitment, right, to their why and wanting to connect with families. Because at the end of the day, families are trusting us and trusting folks with their most treasured, person, which is their little ones, their children. So thank you. I will pass it over to Leslie to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lupita. I do want to answer a few questions that have popped up into the chat, and there's actually some really great resources. Shout out to Cody for supporting some of that, and also Anne from City College, who went ahead and gave a resource. And so I want to go ahead and say that if you are interested, if you are interested in a career in after school, we will be sharing these slides at the end. There are some resources. I have some links here to San Francisco-based youth development job openings. And I believe that Teach for the Bay will also have more resources that are more broad. So you can also search different after-school program positions in Oakland, in Hayward, in Antioch, wherever you're coming from. There is an after-school program. And because of the investment that I mentioned in the beginning, there are more after-school programs that will be created. And so there's always going to be opportunity to join this field. And as we speak, there are movements, and this is some of the work that Lupita and I do on a statewide level to support pathways so that it is easier for you to potentially become, work in after school program, and then are able to access a teacher pathway. So there are apprenticeships that are being built. Some of you may have joined some apprenticeship workshops, opportunities that City College provides, or different community colleges. I heard one from Cabrillo yesterday. So all of these are really great opportunities for you all to engage if teaching is a career that you definitely want to go into, or counseling. There's many bridges. So I definitely want to encourage you all to look into that. And like I said, after school program is a really good space for you all to go ahead and engage. You can go ahead and follow us you can go ahead and follow us on any of the social media platforms. We're on there. Again, we're California After School Network. And of course, visiting our website for some other resources, and some of the pathway work that I just mentioned will be available on the website. And I want to just take a moment to offer space for any maybe two folks to share what you appreciate about today's workshop in true after school fashion. So if I can just have one or two people come off mic and share any highlight for today, that would be great. And everyone else, if you feel comfortable to share in the chat, you can go ahead and do that.
So I really enjoyed the workshop. I own my own daycare, but in the future I want to transfer to something different. I thought I may be in a center, but I don't want to do for centers. So I may do after program at school, and also my child can be involved. And then I know it's important. We help the children to do homework, but like nagging, I don't know say your name, sorry. She mentioned children, she also wants to do something different besides just homework. They don't want to feel like a school. And then I really agree that, you know, like explore, do something different, like a science, like a STEAM. I want to do something like a STEAM, you know, like my program I'm doing now with the kids, but I wanted to expand to the community, like in the future, you know. But thank you for the workshop. That was a very helpful information that you shared.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I also want to say that we do have a feedback form. So if you can take a few minutes to just fill that out, and it actually won't even take a few minutes, it'll take less than a minute probably. And Lupita has shared the link in the chat. So please fill that out and give us some feedback. We definitely appreciate all the feedback we can get. And then Jess, I see that your hand is up, so I'll go ahead and let you speak.
I'd say that one of my big takeaways, and Cody reinforced this, is that after school, the extended learning space, I guess we're calling it, allows for a more rounded approach. It doesn't always have to be academic, and it allows both teachers and students to explore things that aren't traditionally taught during the regular school space. And that was one of my big takeaways from this.
Yeah, so beautifully put. Beautifully put. Definitely, that is something that's very true. And folks like Cody, who will be, in the classroom soon, will get to bring in some of these skills that really make after school so engaging and unique to our young people back into the school day. Which makes school so much more less traditional and more untraditional, which can engage a diversity of learners. Definitely agreed. Well, thank you so much. I hope that you all took some information. If you would like to get more information, feel free to reach out to us. Again, we will be emailing you all the recording as well as the slides. And if you all have any other questions, feel free to shoot us an email.